Hey everybody, today I'm going to give you a few tips about how to improve your sketches. And even though I'm drawing a small kid in this drawing who's holding a cat, these tips kind of go for anything really. They're not specifically for just portraiture, so you can really implement these in drawing anything. Doesn't matter if it's a car or picture of nature or whatever you want. So the first thing that I want you to think about when you're starting a drawing is really the big picture or the composition of the drawing. And I think that many beginners have this problem. Like, I had a big issue with this. When I used to draw like anime stuff, I would just start with the details, and like they would, when I was like 60 or 70% in with the face, then I would just find out that, oh, there's not enough space left on the page to just draw the hair, or like sometimes the hand would be missing. So just planning that drawing ahead and deciding what you want in the drawing, what you want in the frame is really important. And something that will help you out a lot in this decision making process, or what you want in the frame or not, is to be really rough in the first draft of the drawing. Like, I don't want you to make any big commitments right off the bat. Like, even now you can see me holding my pencil sideways and just deciding where everything is. Like, even the cat bit you can see is just like a bunch of lines. It's like guidelines to show where the head is turning and where everything is, and literally it carries no more information. The next thing that you should think about after you figured out where everything is the foundational sketch. Now, what do I mean by the foundational sketch? So I consider this sketch as really a base on which everything stands on. Like, if the base is not strong, then everything just falls apart. It's like making a house. Like, you want the foundation of your house to be really strong. It doesn't matter if you have like great interior designing or whatever decorations that you want in there. Like, if the foundation is not strong, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like someone who can draw an eye really, really beautifully, but is not too sure about the placement of the eye and where that eye sits in the frame. So yeah. And I do believe that rendering something is just like, it's like the next step after you get really, really good at sketching. Like, you should at least have that likeness between the drawing that you're making and the reference that you're using. I saw an incredible artist on Instagram the other day. I don't remember who it was, but he said that getting likeness in portraits or like in any subject that you're drawing is like really, really difficult. Like, it takes time, and it's also really the most difficult step that you'll encounter in the journey. So, and I do agree with that, because in my experience too, like, you have to push for quantity over quality at first, because you can get like really caught up in that single drawing, and you can literally spend hours and hours on that one piece and never really knowing when to quit. Like, you should stop at one point and just like brush up those other skills. And I think sketching is definitely up there. Like, it's a skill that you should absolutely try to practice every day. And once you're done with the sketch, then you can, I think, push for values and like start adding in some shades. So yeah, the next step will be values, like getting those values right. Now, to make decisions about which value goes where, you have to really look at your subject and understand the form of it. Like, if I'm drawing a portrait, I have to understand from which direction the light is hitting the face and which direction is facing away from the light. And this is again one of the mistakes that I made in my drawings before, is like not studying the references correctly. Like, if you just take like 5 to 6 minutes just understanding the conditions of light that are in the portrait or whatever subject that you're drawing, it's gonna help you big time. And I don't even go for that super realistic look when I'm drawing. And another thing to keep in mind when you're drawing is the kind of medium that you're using. So let me explain this. If you're drawing using charcoal, then it's comparatively easier to achieve those darker shades that you find in the areas that do not receive light, or like hair strands even. It's really easy to achieve those dark shades. But if you like using pencils and you like using graphite like me, then it's a little bit more difficult to achieve those darker shades. And it's really a game of patience to achieve that level of contrast using graphite. It's not that it's not achievable, but it definitely takes more time. And also, another tip that may help you out in this is reducing the contrast of the reference that you're using. Now, it's not my tip. Like, I got this from Stephen Bauman. He said this in one of his portrait drawing videos. Yeah, I'm having a hard time recalling which video it was, but I will surely link it in the description if I find it. Another thing that I would suggest you to practice on is the observational skills that you have, and just to get better at observing things. And to get better at the observation skills, you have to go deeper. Like, you can't just look at your reference and just start drawing on the paper. You have to understand it. You have to understand the subject that you're drawing. And really, some of the people like listening to music when you're drawing, and I understand it, but it's something that ties into the sketching bit that I discussed earlier. And it's a constant comparison. Like, you look at your reference and then you stare at your drawing, you look at your reference, you measure the proportions, and if it's not like a life-size portrait, and if you're not tracing, then you have to adjust the proportions in your paper. Like, the drawing that I'm making, its sketch was not something that's super accurate to what I saw on the laptop. Like, I didn't really make those accurate measurements. It was just a freehand sketch. And whenever you're taking a stab at these lines, when you're starting out with a drawing, you have to understand the fact that you will not be able to copy that portrait or whatever you're drawing to the point where there are literally no margins of error. It's not possible. Like, you have to get the idea, you have to get the angles right and the placement of the features right, and it would make sense. You'll be fine with that. Work up to a point where you have that resemblance and you have that likeness, and yeah. And something that really helped me out with the observation is like being present. Like, I obviously cannot listen to music when I'm blocking in and like getting that first sketch in and just observing and putting down details on the page. Like, especially if you're like, let's say if you're drawing nature, then you don't have to get that sort of resemblance or the likeness. Like, the proportions can be off, one tree can be farther away from another when you compare it to the reference, but when you're drawing portraits or trying to get likeness or like just that resemblance in, then you have to be careful and you have to be really sensitive to each stroke that you make. So if I'm making a portrait and I put down the placement of a brow ridge, I have to compare it with a hairline, because that would give me an accurate measurement of where the top of the head would lie, and that would also kind of give me an idea of the length of the head and how wide the head is. So be sensitive to each stroke that you make, and pay attention to whatever you're putting down on the paper, because it always works in relationships to one another. Assuming that you're not attentive and you're not fully present, let's say you kind of misjudge the distance between the brow ridge and the nose, and that is completely going to change the direction in which your portrait is heading. And the reason for that is you're not really using a particular guideline as a reference point. In freehand sketching, what you're doing is you're letting each mark that you already have on the paper serve as the guideline, if that makes sense. So assuming that you already got it wrong, you have the measurement wrong from the previous step, it's just going to be a bad foundation, because you're going to use that bad metric, you're going to use that bad measurement, that inaccurate measurement serve as the reference point for the next stroke. So if that next stroke is let's say the distance between the nose and the jawline, and you're using that distance between the brow ridge and the nose as a reference point, then yeah, whatever you're drawing, it's not going to look like your reference. And if you're just starting out, try not to listen to any music or like some podcast while you're drawing this. Like, this is a skill and it takes time to get better at it, so treat it as such, and I don't think you're gonna have any issues. You'll see some decent improvement within a few weeks if you're just consistent. And that is my last point, actually: consistency, being really persistent and resilient with your craft. And it's not really just drawing, it's like a general advice. If you want to get good at anything, you just have to give it time. It sounds really simple to do, but when you start doing it, it's not that easy. Like, it just sounds simple, but it's actually not that easy to follow through. It's not easy to just like draw even if you don't feel like it, or just practice when you don't feel like it. But that's exactly how you improve, right? It's so funny because if you're an artist, then you would also find that people kind of romanticize it. They think it's like a sunny day and a cup of coffee in our hands, and we just start drawing feeling so motivated every day, and there's a smile on our face and a pencil in our hands, and we're just enjoying every second of it. But that's not true. Like, I heard Chris Williamson say this, like, the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. And I think every artist should at least listen to this and follow the advice, because if you're not really spending a few hours every day, if you're not at least just give 30 minutes each day to your craft, man. You should at least touch a pencil, draw something, and just like give it time, man. Because if you're not giving it time, then you should not really be complaining that you're not drawing that good. So yes, just give it time and be patient with it. So yeah, this kind of wraps up my video, and I'll see you in the next one.